I'm Linda, 28 years old, and I thought I'd finally found my place in this family. For 6 years since graduating college, I'd been the one everyone turned to when money got tight. Medical bills, car repairs, house payments, I covered it all without complaint. I believed my generosity meant I belonged, that I was valued. But sitting at that restaurant table during Dad's 60th birthday celebration, watching Mom's face twist into something cruel, I realized how wrong I'd been. The woman who raised me was about to say something that would shatter every illusion I had about family loyalty. Before I tell you what happened that night, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how one sentence changed everything between my mother and me forever. Now, let me take you back to that dinner table where my world shifted. Growing up as the middle child between two brothers wasn't easy. Tom was 3 years older, the golden boy who could do no wrong in Mom's eyes. Gary was 2 years younger, the baby who got away with everything. I was just Linda, stuck in between, constantly trying to prove I deserved the same attention and love they seemed to get effortlessly. From elementary school through high school, I threw myself into academics. While Tom played football and Gary charmed everyone with his humor, I studied. I made honor roll every semester, participated in debate club, volunteered at the local library. I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, Mom would finally see me the way she saw my brothers. The financial struggles started when I was 15. Dad's construction company hit hard times during the recession. I watched my parents whisper anxiously over bills at the kitchen table, saw Mom's face when she had to tell us there wouldn't be money for new school clothes that year. Tom was already in college on a partial football scholarship, but even that wasn't covering everything. That's when I decided my future. I was going to study finance, make good money, and ensure my family never struggled again. I spent my junior and senior years working part-time at a local diner, saving every penny for college while maintaining my 4.0 grade point average. The full scholarship to State University felt like vindication. Finally, I'd done something that made Dad beam with pride, and Mom grudgingly admit I was smart. But even then, I noticed she always added qualifiers. Linda's smart, but she doesn't have Tom's leadership skills. She's focused, but not as naturally gifted as Gary. College was where I truly found myself. Finance came naturally to me. Numbers made sense in a way human relationships never had. By my junior year, I was tutoring other students and had landed an internship at a local investment firm. That's also when the first call came. Linda, honey, your father's truck broke down and we can't afford the repairs. I know you're just a student, but I didn't hesitate. I sent $500 from my tutoring earnings, money I'd been saving for textbooks. When Mom called again 2 months later about an unexpected medical bill, I sent another $300. Then it was the mortgage payment they were short on. Then Gary's car insurance. By senior year, I was sending home nearly half of my internship salary. My roommates went out on weekends while I worked extra hours to cover both my family's needs and my own expenses. I told myself it was temporary, that once I graduated and got a real job, everything would balance out. But it never did. After graduation, I landed a position as a financial analyst with a solid starting salary. Instead of feeling relieved, the financial requests increased. Now that I had a real job, my family's expectations grew. Dad needed a new truck for work. The house needed a new roof. Gary wanted to go to community college but didn't qualify for financial aid. I said yes to everything. Every request was framed as temporary, an emergency, a one-time favor. I lived in a tiny studio apartment while sending money for house repairs. I drove a 10-year-old Honda while making payments on Dad's truck. I bought discount groceries while funding family dinners at nice restaurants when I came to visit. The pattern was so gradual I barely noticed it forming. I became the family ATM, the reliable one, the responsible daughter who had it all together. What I didn't have was a life of my own, but I told myself that sacrifice was what love looked like. 6 months ago, everything changed when Dad had chest pains at work. The ambulance ride, emergency room visit, and cardiac workup revealed several blocked arteries requiring immediate surgery. The medical bills were staggering, even with insurance. Without hesitation, I emptied my savings account and took out a personal loan to cover the costs. During Dad's recovery, I visited every weekend, bringing groceries and helping with household tasks. It was during one of these visits that Mom mentioned Dad's upcoming 60th birthday. She seemed stressed about not being able to afford a proper celebration. "Don't worry about it. I told her. Let me handle everything. I researched restaurants for weeks, finally settling on Meridian, an upscale steakhouse downtown. I made reservations for 8 people, arranged for flowers, even coordinated with the staff for a special birthday dessert. The cost would be significant, but seeing Dad happy after such a difficult year felt worth any price. When I called to confirm the details, I told Mom I'd take care of the bill, but suggested we present it as a family gift to Dad. I didn't want him feeling guilty about the expense, especially after all the medical costs. That's very generous, Linda, Mom said, but her tone was flat, almost resentful. At the time, I assumed she was just stressed about Dad's health. Looking back now, I realized that was the beginning of the end. The evening of Dad's birthday, I arrived at Meridian 30 minutes early to confirm arrangements with the staff. The restaurant was elegant without being stuffy, with warm lighting and rich mahogany furnishings. I'd requested a private dining area, and the hostess led me to a beautiful corner section with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Fresh flowers adorned the table, exactly as I'd arranged. The sommelier approached to discuss wine selections, and I chose a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet Sauvignon. Despite the $80 price tag, everything had to be perfect. My family arrived together, a coordinated unit from which I was somehow always separate. Dad looked distinguished in the navy blazer I'd bought him for Christmas, his color much better than it had been months earlier. Mom wore her best dress, the burgundy one with the pearl buttons, and had clearly spent time on her hair and makeup. Tom arrived with his wife Sarah and their 2 kids, 8-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Jake. He'd gained weight since his football days, but still carried himself with that confident swagger that had always made him Mom's favorite. Sarah was perfectly polished as always. Designer handbag and manicured nails, supported by Tom's middle management salary at the insurance company. Gary came alone, having broken up with his latest girlfriend the month before. At 26, he was still figuring himself out, working part-time at a sporting goods store while supposedly pursuing his music career. His charm remained intact, making everyone laugh within minutes of sitting down. Then there was me, Linda, 28 and single after my relationship with Marcus ended 3 months earlier. He'd said I was too focused on everyone else's problems to pay attention to our relationship. At the time, I'd been angry at his selfishness. Now, sitting alone while my brothers had their families, his words stung with uncomfortable truth. Linda, this place is fancy, Gary whistled, looking around at the restaurant. Must be costing someone a fortune. It's Dad's 60th, I replied simply. He deserves something special. Mom's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, some of us believe in living within our means. The comment felt like a small barb, but I brushed it off. This evening was about Dad, not whatever mood Mom was in. As we settled into our seats, I noticed Mom positioning herself at the opposite end of the table from me. Dad sat at the head, beaming with happiness at having his whole family together. The kids chattered excitedly about the fancy cloth napkins and multiple forks at each place setting. The server approached with menus, and I caught his eye, nodding slightly. We'd arranged earlier that he would discreetly handle the bill when the time came. I'd already provided my credit card information to avoid any awkward moments about payment. Should we start with some wine? I suggested, knowing Dad would appreciate the gesture. Wine sounds perfect, Dad agreed, his eyes crinkling with joy. This is such a treat having everyone together like this. But as the evening progressed, I began to notice Mom's comments becoming more pointed. When I mentioned my recent promotion to senior analyst, she remarked, "Must be nice to have all that extra money to throw around." When the appetizers arrived and I suggested we order a few to share, she added, "I suppose when you're single with no real responsibilities, you can afford to be generous." Each comment was delivered with a smile, couched in language that could be interpreted as harmless observation. But the underlying message was clear. I was being criticized for the very financial stability that had been supporting the family for years. Dad seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, lost in his happiness at the celebration. Tom and Gary laughed along with Mom's remarks, treating them as good-natured family teasing, but I felt each one like a small cut, the cumulative effect building into something much more painful. As the main course arrived, the conversation turned to family memories, with everyone sharing stories about Dad's life and accomplishments. It should have been heartwarming, but Mom's commentary continued to poison the atmosphere for me. When Tom told a story about Dad teaching him to drive, Mom added, "He was always so patient with the boys. Girls are different, though, more complicated. When Gary shared a memory about Dad coming to his high school concerts, she said, "Your father always made time for what really mattered. Not everyone appreciates that kind of dedication." I tried to contribute my own memories, but each attempt was either ignored or somehow turned into a criticism. When I mentioned how Dad had driven 4 hours to my college graduation, Mom responded, "Well, he felt obligated. You were always so demanding of his attention." The wine was flowing freely now, and with each glass, Mom's restraint seemed to diminish. Her comments became more direct, less disguised as casual observations. "Linda always thinks she knows best," she said when I suggested we order dessert. "Must come from spending so much time with numbers instead of people." Tom laughed. "She's always been the serious one. Remember how she used to make spreadsheets for her allowance?" "I was 10, I said quietly, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Even then, she was obsessed with money," Gary added. Apparently thinking he was being funny, I looked around the table, suddenly seeing the dynamic clearly. I was the outsider, the one they could safely mock because I'd never fought back. The responsible one, the reliable one, the one who paid for everything while being treated like the family joke. Dad must have sensed my discomfort because he tried to redirect the conversation. "Linda's done very well for herself. We're proud of her success." But Mom wasn't finished. "Success," she repeated as if the word tasted bitter. "I suppose that's one way to look at it, though I've always believed there's more to life than just making money." The implication was clear. I was shallow, materialistic, missing out on what truly mattered. This from the woman whose medical bills I'd paid, whose mortgage I'd helped with, whose family dinners I was currently funding. I felt my patience beginning to fray, but I held my tongue. This was Dad's birthday. I wouldn't ruin it by starting an argument. The server approached with the wine list, asking if we'd like another bottle. I was about to agree when Mom spoke up. "Oh, I think we've had enough. Some of us have to work tomorrow." She looked directly at me. "Though I suppose when you make enough money you can afford to take time off whenever you want." That wasn't even true. I worked more hours than anyone at my firm, taking on extra projects to advance my career and maintain the income that supported not just myself, but increasingly my family. "Actually, I've been working 60-hour weeks," I said, trying to keep my voice level. The promotion came with additional responsibilities. 60 hours, Tom whistled. "No wonder you're still single. Who has time for a relationship working like that?" Sarah elbowed him, recognizing the insensitivity of the comment, but the damage was done. The breakup with Marcus was still fresh, and having it thrown in my face at a family dinner felt particularly cruel. Mom seized on the moment. "That's exactly what I mean. Linda's so focused on her career, she's missing out on what really matters. Family, relationships, a normal life." I stared at her across the table, this woman who had raised me, wondering how she could be so blind to the irony of her words. I was missing out on a normal life precisely because I was so focused on taking care of this family. But still, I said nothing. I smiled tightly and reached for my wine glass, counting the minutes until this dinner would be over. The tension reached a breaking point when the server arrived with Dad's birthday cake, a rich chocolate creation with "Happy 60th Birthday" written in elegant script. Dad's face lit up with genuine joy as we sang, and for a moment the earlier unpleasantness faded into the background. "Make a wish, Dad," Emma called out, clapping her hands. Dad closed his eyes, made his wish, and blew out the candles to enthusiastic applause. The moment felt pure, untainted by the underlying currents that had been building all evening. "Time for presents," Sarah announced, producing a carefully wrapped package from Tom's family. The gifts were thoughtful but modest. Tom and Sarah had gotten Dad a nice polo shirt and a book about woodworking. Gary presented a framed photo of himself and Dad from a fishing trip last summer. The kids had made handmade cards that Dad treasured as much as anything else. I had saved my gift for last, both because I wanted it to be special and because I was nervous about the family's reaction. The watch had cost more than everyone else's gifts combined, but when I'd seen Dad admiring it in the jewelry store window months earlier, I'd known it was perfect. "This is from me, Dad," I said, sliding the small velvet box across the table. Dad opened it carefully, and his breath caught when he saw the Omega Seamaster inside. It was a beautiful timepiece, classic and elegant, with a navy blue face that matched his favorite blazer. "Linda," he whispered, his eyes filling with tears, "this is too much. I can't accept this." "You can and you will," I said firmly. "You've worked hard your whole life, Dad. You deserve something beautiful." He lifted the watch from its box with reverent hands, and I helped him fasten it around his wrist. The fit was perfect, and the watch looked distinguished against his tan skin. "It's gorgeous," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll treasure it always." But as I looked around the table, I realized my gift had created an uncomfortable moment. Everyone else's presents suddenly seemed inadequate by comparison, and the disparity in cost was obvious to everyone. Gary let out a low whistle. Damn, Linda, that's a serious watch. Language, Sarah scolded automatically, glancing at the kids. Tom was studying the watch with obvious envy. That must have cost a fortune. It doesn't matter what it cost, I said, but I could feel the mood at the table shifting. Mom's face had hardened into something cold and calculating. I watched her processing the implications of my expensive gift, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her mind. Well, she said finally, her voice dripping with false sweetness, I suppose when you don't have a husband or children to support, you can afford to spend money on whatever you want. The comment hit like a physical blow. Not only was she diminishing my gift to Dad, but she was also highlighting my single status and childlessness as personal failures. Dad tried to intervene. Margaret, that's enough. Linda gave me a beautiful gift, and I'm grateful, but Mom wasn't finished. She'd been building up to this moment all evening, and now she was ready to strike. Oh, I'm sure you are grateful, Robert. Linda's always been very good at buying affection. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Everyone at the table understood the implication, that my generosity wasn't genuine love but some kind of manipulation or attempt to purchase approval. I felt my world tilting. This was my mother, the woman who had raised me, and she was suggesting that every sacrifice I'd made for this family was somehow calculated and selfish. That's not fair, I said quietly, my voice barely steady. Isn't it? Mom's mask was slipping now, revealing something ugly underneath. You throw money around like you're doing us all some great favor, but what you're really doing is showing off, making the rest of us feel small. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 6 years of sending money home, of covering medical bills and mortgage payments and car repairs, and she was framing it as vanity? I've never made anyone feel small, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. I just wanted to help. Help, she repeated mockingly. Right, help. She took another sip of wine, and I could see she was past the point of caring about consequences. You know what I think, Linda? I think you use money to control people, to make yourself feel important. The restaurant seemed to fade around us. Other diners' conversations became background noise. All I could hear was my mother's voice, sharp and cruel, cutting through every illusion I'd held about my place in this family. Dad was looking between us with growing alarm. Margaret, please. Not tonight, but Mom was beyond stopping. She'd been holding this in for months, maybe years, and now it was all spilling out. No, Robert, she needs to hear this. Linda thinks she's so much better than the rest of us because she has money. She lords it over us, makes us feel like we should be grateful for every little thing she does. I was shaking now. Years of suppressed hurt and anger rising to the surface. Every little thing. I paid for Dad's surgery. I've been covering your mortgage for 2 years. I'm paying for this dinner right now. The words came out louder than I'd intended, and I noticed other restaurant patrons beginning to glance in our direction. Mom's eyes flashed with something like triumph. She'd succeeded in provoking me, in making me lose my composure at Dad's birthday dinner. There it is, she said with satisfaction. The truth comes out. You keep track of every penny, don't you? Every favor cataloged, every dollar spent held over our heads. That's not true, I said desperately, looking around the table for support, but Tom and Gary were staring at their plates, unwilling to get involved. Sarah was focused on keeping the kids distracted. Dad looked stricken but paralyzed. Mom leaned forward, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting would have. You want to know what I really think, Linda? I think you're pathetic. A lonely, bitter woman who can't buy the love she's never earned naturally. The words hit me like physical blows, but she wasn't finished. You sit there in your expensive clothes, flashing your money around, thinking it makes you special. But you know what? You're not even part of this family, she said the last words with a cruel laugh, as if the very idea of my belonging was absurd. The restaurant fell silent around our table. Even the ambient noise seemed to disappear as her words echoed in my mind. You're not even part of this family. Everything stopped. My heart, my breathing, my ability to think clearly. The woman who had given birth to me, who had raised me for 18 years, had just declared that I didn't belong. Time seemed suspended in that moment after Mom's words. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, could feel the blood draining from my face as the full impact of what she'd said settled over me. You're not even part of this family. Around the table, everyone had gone still. Dad's face was ashen, his mouth hanging slightly open in shock. Tom and Gary were staring staring at Mom with expressions of disbelief. Sarah had her hands over Emma's ears, trying to shield the children from the ugliness unfolding before them, but Mom looked satisfied, almost triumphant. She'd finally said what she'd apparently been thinking for years, and the relief on her face was unmistakable. The rage that built inside me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It started as a cold knot in my stomach and spread outward like fire, consuming every rational thought. 6 years of sacrifice, of putting my family's needs before my own, of working 60-hour weeks to support people who saw me as an outsider. I thought about my tiny studio apartment, furnished with secondhand furniture because I'd been sending money home instead of building a real life for myself. I thought about Marcus, who'd left because I was always stressed about family financial crises, always choosing their needs over our relationship. I thought about the watch on Dad's wrist, purchased with money I'd earned through countless late nights and weekend projects. I thought about the medical bills I'd paid without question, the mortgage payments I'd covered without complaint, the credit card debt I'd taken on to keep this family afloat. And I thought about sitting alone in that restaurant, the outsider at my own father's birthday celebration, being told I wasn't even part of the family I'd been supporting. The clarity that came with rage was almost crystalline. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my family dynamics with perfect, painful honesty. I wasn't the beloved daughter who helped out occasionally. I was the family ATM, valued only for what I could provide, resented even for that. Mom was watching me, waiting for my reaction. Perhaps she expected tears or an angry outburst that would let her paint me as the unstable one. Maybe she thought I'd apologize, try to make peace as I always had before. Instead, I reached for my wine glass with a steady hand. The action seemed to surprise her. I could see confusion flicker across her face as I lifted the glass, holding it at eye level as if making a toast. "Perfect," I said, my voice calm and clear despite the chaos raging inside me. "Then don't ask me for any more money." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that spread across every face at the table. Mom's expression changed instantly. The triumphant satisfaction disappeared, replaced by something that looked like panic. For the first time, she seemed to understand the implications of what she'd just said. "Linda," she started, but I held up my free hand to stop her. "No, Mom, you're absolutely right. If I'm not part of this family, then I have no obligations to this family." I took a sip of wine, savoring both the taste and the growing alarm on my mother's face. Dad found his voice first. "Linda, sweetheart, your mother didn't mean that. She's just upset about something. This isn't what any of us want." But I was looking at Mom, watching the color drain from her cheeks as she began to calculate what my words meant. "Didn't you mean it, Mom?" I asked, with deceptive gentleness. "Because it sounded like you meant it. It sounded like you've been thinking it for a long time." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I continued, my voice growing stronger with each sentence. "Because if I'm not part of this family, then I should probably stop acting like I am. I should stop paying for family dinners like this one. I should stop covering mortgage payments and medical bills and car repairs." Tom and Gary were looking back and forth between Mom and me, finally beginning to understand the scope of my financial contributions to the family. "I should probably stop taking calls at midnight when someone needs emergency money," I continued. "I should stop working overtime to cover everyone else's shortfalls. I should start living like the selfish, money-obsessed person you seem to think I am." "Linda, please," Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. But I wasn't finished. 6 years of suppressed resentment were pouring out now, and I couldn't have stopped if I'd wanted to. "You know what's funny, Mom? You're right about one thing. I do keep track of money. So let me share some numbers with everyone." I looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member in turn. $18,000 for Dad's medical bills, $12,000 in mortgage payments over the past 2 years, $8,000 for Tom's car when it was repossessed, $6,000 for Gary's community college tuition that he never finished, $4,000 for the new roof, $3,000 for the furnace repair last winter. With each number, Mom's face grew paler, and my brother's expressions grew more shocked. "This dinner tonight, $350, including wine and tip, all paid for by someone who isn't even part of the family." The silence in the restaurant was complete now. Even other diners had stopped their conversations, sensing the drama unfolding at our table. Mom tried again, her voice desperate. "Linda, I was just upset. I didn't really mean—" "You meant it," I said firmly. "And you know what? You're right. I have been trying to buy love, trying to earn my place in this family with money, but you can't buy something that was never for sale." I stood up slowly, my legs surprisingly steady despite the emotional earthquake I was experiencing. The restaurant around us remained silent, other diners pretending not to watch, while clearly riveted by the family drama unfolding at our table. Where are you going? Dad asked, panic creeping into his voice. I'm going home, I said simply. But first, I need to take care of something. I caught the server's eye and motioned him over. He approached cautiously, clearly aware that something significant was happening at our table. I need to make a change to the payment method, I told him quietly. Please remove my credit card from the bill. The server glanced nervously around the table, unsure how to handle the situation. Ma'am, your card is already on file for the entire dinner. Then please remove it and bring separate checks for everyone, I said firmly. Mom's face went from pale to ashen. Linda, don't be ridiculous. We can work this out. But I was already pulling my wallet from my purse, removing the credit card I'd planned to use for the family celebration. The server took it hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the tension radiating from our table. Actually, I said, reconsidering, just bring my check separately. Everyone else can figure out how to split theirs. The implications of my words hit the table like a physical force. This wasn't just about one dinner. This was about the end of my financial support, the end of my role as the family safety net. Tom was the first to really understand. Linda, wait. Let's talk about this. Mom was out of line, but we can fix this. Can we? I asked, turning to face him. Because I don't think this is something that just happened tonight, Tom. I think this is how all of you have felt for a long time. Gary was frantically calculating in his head, probably trying to figure out how much money I'd contributed to his life over the years. His part-time job at the sporting goods store barely covered his rent, let alone his other expenses. Come on, Linda, he said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. We're family. Family fights, sometimes it doesn't mean anything. It means everything, I replied. It means I finally understand where I stand with all of you. Dad was trying desperately to salvage the situation. Your mother has been under a lot of stress lately. The medical bills, the recovery, all the changes. She's not thinking clearly. Dad, I said gently, my heart breaking a little at the pain in his eyes. The medical bills that I paid, the stress about money that I've been covering for years. Mom's not upset about financial pressure. She's upset that I exist. I looked directly at Mom, who was staring at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. Isn't that right, Mom? You've resented every dollar I've sent, every bill I've paid, every time I've helped this family. Not because you didn't need the help, but because needing it made you feel small. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. The time for sympathy had passed when she declared I wasn't part of the family. You want to know what the real problem is, I continued. It's not that I have money. It's that I have independence. It's that I built a life for myself instead of getting married and having babies like you think I should have. It's that I succeeded in ways that make you uncomfortable. That's not true, she whispered. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been punishing me for not fitting into your idea of what a daughter should be. The server returned with separate checks, placing mine discreetly beside my plate and setting the remaining bill in the center of the table. The amount was significant. I could see from the expressions on my brothers' faces as they glimpsed the total. I can't afford this, Gary said quietly, the reality of the situation sinking in. Neither can we, Tom added, looking at Sarah with growing panic. Not with the kids' expenses and everything else. Dad reached for his wallet, but I could see from his expression that he was calculating whether his fixed income could cover an unexpected $300 dinner bill. This is exactly what I'm talking about, I said, pulling out enough cash to cover my portion plus a generous tip. For 6 years, I've been the solution to problems like this. Well, I'm not part of the family, so it's not my problem anymore. Mom was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. Linda, please. I was wrong to say what I said. I was angry and I lashed out. But you can't just abandon your family over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated incredulously. Mom, this wasn't one mistake. This was you finally saying what you've been thinking all along. I placed my money on the table and picked up my purse. The weight of 6 years of family obligation was lifting from my shoulders, leaving me feeling simultaneously lighter and more alone than I'd ever been. I want you all to understand something, I said, looking around the table one final time. I never threw money around to show off or make anyone feel small. I helped because I loved you, because I thought that's what family did for each other. But love has to go both ways. Dad stood up, reaching for my arm. Please don't leave like this. It's my birthday. We can fix this. I hugged him gently, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. Happy birthday, Dad. I hope the watch brings you joy for many years to come. Linda, he pleaded, I love you, Dad. I always will. But I can't keep pretending that sending money home is the same thing as being loved in return. I kissed his cheek and stepped back. My decision final. I hope you all figure out how to pay for dinner, I said to the table at large. And I hope you figure out how to pay for everything else too. With that, I walked away from the table, through the restaurant, past the curious stares of other diners, and out into the cool evening air. For the first time in 6 years, I was truly free. The drive home was surreal. I kept expecting to feel guilt or regret about walking out on Dad's birthday dinner, but instead I felt something I barely recognized. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief at finally standing up for myself. My phone started ringing before I'd even reached my apartment. Dad's number appeared on the screen, then Tom's, then Gary's. I let them all go to voicemail. Whatever they had to say could wait until I'd processed what had just happened. My studio apartment felt different when I walked in. The same secondhand furniture, the same cramped space, but somehow it felt more like home than it ever had before. This was my space, paid for with my money, decorated with my choices. No family obligations hanging over every decision. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my small couch, finally allowing myself to fully absorb the events of the evening. 6 years of financial support had ended with one sentence from my mother. 6 years of sacrifice, of putting family needs before my own, dismissed as selfishness and showing off. The phone rang again, Mom's number this time. I stared at it for several rings before declining the call. The voicemail started accumulating quickly. Dad's first message was desperate, pleading. Linda, sweetheart, please call me back. Your mother is beside herself. She knows she made a terrible mistake. We can work this out. Please don't let one bad evening destroy our family. Tom's message was more practical, more panicked. Linda, I don't know what just happened back there, but we need to talk. I had no idea you were covering so much of Mom and Dad's expenses. We need to figure this situation out. Gary's was shorter, more emotional. I messed up, Linda. We all did. I never realized how much you've been doing for all of us. Please call me back. But it was Mom's message that revealed the most. Linda, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I said terrible things tonight. Things I didn't mean. But please, we need to talk. Your father's surgery bills aren't the only debts we have. We owe money on the house, on the cars, on credit cards we used for living expenses. Without your help, I don't know how we're going to manage. Please, honey. I'm sorry. I played that message 3 times, each listening revealing new layers of manipulation. Even in her apology, Mom was focusing on what my withdrawal of support would cost them, not on the pain her words had caused me. The next few days brought a constant stream of phone calls, text messages, and emails. Dad called every morning and evening, his voice growing more strained with each message. Tom and Gary took turns trying different approaches. Guilt, anger, bargaining, pleading. But it was the silence from Mom that spoke the loudest. After that first desperate voicemail, nothing. No apology, no attempt to make amends, no acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused. Her silence confirmed what I'd suspected. She wasn't sorry for what she'd said, only sorry for the consequences. A week after the dinner, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable before Mom's declaration. I booked a vacation to Hawaii, something I'd been putting off for years because there was always a family financial crisis that needed my attention. The travel agent was surprised by how quickly I made decisions. First-class flights, oceanfront hotel, full spa package. For the first time in my adult life, I was spending money on myself without calculating how it would affect my family support budget. This is quite a splurge, the agent commented as she processed my credit card. I'm celebrating my independence, I told her. The vacation was a revelation. 10 days of beaches and spa treatments and fine dining. 10 days of not checking my phone every hour for financial emergency calls from home. I read novels on the beach, took sunset walks along the shore, had conversations with strangers who knew nothing about my family obligations. On the flight home, I felt like a different person. Tanned, relaxed, and most importantly, confident in my worth as an individual rather than as a financial resource. The transformation wasn't lost on my colleagues at work. My boss, Jennifer, commented on my improved focus and energy during our next team meeting. Whatever you did on vacation, keep doing it, she said. Your performance has been exceptional since you got back. It turned out that not being constantly stressed about family finances was good for my career. Who would have thought? 3 months after Dad's birthday dinner, the full consequences of my withdrawal from family financial support became apparent. The phone calls had continued, growing more desperate as bills came due, and the family realized I wasn't bluffing about ending my support. Dad's first call came when the mortgage payment was due. His voice was shaky, older somehow. Linda, I hate to ask, but we're short on the house payment this month. Could you possibly help us out one more time? I know things ended badly at dinner, but this is about keeping a roof over our heads. I listened to the entire message twice before deleting it. The old Linda would have immediately transferred money, would have worked overtime to cover the shortfall. The new Linda recognized manipulation when she heard it. Tom called when his own financial house of cards began tumbling down. Apparently, he'd been counting on my continued support more than I'd realized. Linda, I don't know how to say this, but I might lose my car. I've been behind on payments for months, and I was counting on being able to ask you for help like always. I know Mom was out of line, but you can't punish me for what she said. But I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply no longer enabling a dysfunctional dynamic that had been damaging all of us. Gary's situation was the most predictable. Without my financial support, his part-time income couldn't sustain his lifestyle. He'd been evicted from his apartment and was living on friends' couches. I get it, okay? His voicemail said. You're mad at Mom, and you should be, but I'm about to be homeless, Linda. I'm your brother. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, which was exactly why I couldn't keep enabling his refusal to take responsibility for his own life. The most revealing conversation came from an unexpected source. Sarah, Tom's wife, she called me at work one afternoon, her usually composed voice strained with stress. Linda, I need you to understand something. Tom's been lying to me about our finances for years. I thought we were doing okay, but apparently he's been relying on money from you to cover basic expenses. I had no idea. I'm sorry, Sarah. I never meant for my support to create problems in your marriage. That's not why I'm calling, she said firmly. I'm calling because I think you did the right thing walking away. Tom needs to learn to handle his own responsibilities. We both do. Her words meant more to me than she could have known. Finally, someone in my family was acknowledging that my withdrawal wasn't cruelty, but necessity. How are the kids handling everything? I asked, genuinely concerned about Emma and Jake. They're fine. Better than fine, actually. Tom's been spending more time with them since he can't go out with friends as much. Silver lining, I guess. The conversation with Sarah gave me hope that some good might come from this difficult situation. But the most significant change was in myself. Free from the constant drain of family financial obligations, I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. My work performance improved dramatically, leading to another promotion and a significant salary increase. I started dating again, meeting people through work and social activities, instead of being too stressed and tired for relationships. The difference was remarkable. Without the constant worry about family crises, I was more present, more engaged, more capable of forming genuine connections. I also started therapy, something I'd been putting off for years because I was too busy dealing with everyone else's problems to address my own. Dr. Patricia Chen became an invaluable guide in helping me understand the family dynamics that had shaped my adult life. You've been functioning as the parentified child, she explained during one of our sessions, taking on adult responsibilities and emotional burdens that weren't yours to carry. Your mother's resentment likely stems from the fact that your competence highlighted her own feelings of inadequacy. The insight was both painful and liberating. I began to understand that Mom's cruelty hadn't been about my failures, but about her own insecurities and the power dynamics within our family system. 4 months after the dinner, Dad finally called with a different kind of message. Linda, I need to tell you something. Your mother and I have been going to counseling. She's been working through some issues about self-worth and family dynamics. She wants to apologize to you properly when you're ready to hear it. I appreciated Dad's message, but I wasn't ready yet. The hurt was still too fresh, the patterns too ingrained. Real change would take time to prove itself. 6 months after that fateful birthday dinner, Mom finally reached out with a letter instead of a phone call. The handwritten pages arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, and I let them sit on my kitchen counter for 3 days before finding the courage to read them. Dear Linda, the letter began. I know I have no right to expect you to read this, let alone respond to it. But I need to try to explain, and more importantly, to apologize for the terrible things I said to you. The letter was 5 pages long, detailing Mom's journey through therapy and her growing understanding of how her own insecurities had poisoned our relationship. She wrote about feeling inadequate as a mother, especially in comparison to what she saw as my competence and success. I was jealous of you, she admitted. Jealous of your independence, your success, your ability to solve problems that left your father and me feeling helpless. Instead of being proud of the strong woman I'd raised, I resented you for being everything I felt I wasn't. She acknowledged the years of financial support I'd provided and the sacrifice it had required. I know now that every dollar you sent home represented hours of your life, opportunities you gave up, dreams you deferred. Instead of being grateful, I was resentful. I turned your generosity into a weapon against you, and I can never forgive myself for that. The apology felt genuine, but it was her acknowledgement of the damage that meant the most. I know I can't take back what I said. I know I can't undo the years of making you feel like your love wasn't enough. But I want you to know that I understand now. You were never trying to buy our love. You were trying to show yours. She ended the letter with a promise rather than a plea. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to return to the way things were. But I promise that if you ever decide to give me another chance, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the mother you deserved all along. I read the letter multiple times over several days, each reading revealing new layers of meaning and emotion. In therapy, Dr. Chen helped me process my feelings about Mom's apology and what it might mean for our future relationship. Apologies are important, she said, but they're just the beginning. Real change requires sustained effort and behavioral modification over time. I decided to write back, but I kept my response brief and boundaried. Mom, I received your letter and I appreciate your honesty about the therapy and your insights. I'm glad you're working on understanding these patterns. However, I need more time before I'm ready to rebuild our relationship. When I am ready, it will need to be a completely different dynamic than what we had before. I didn't mention money or financial support. That conversation would come later, if at all. Meanwhile, my life continued to improve in ways I'd never anticipated. The promotion at work came with opportunities to travel and lead major projects. I was featured in a finance industry magazine as a rising star, something that would have been impossible when I was constantly distracted by family crises. My dating life flourished as well. I met David at a work conference, and our relationship developed naturally without the interference of family financial emergencies. He was a marketing executive with his own demanding career, and he understood my professional ambitions in ways Marcus never had. You seem so centered, David commented after we'd been dating for 2 months. Like you really know who you are and what you want. I'd never thought of myself that way before, but he was right. For the first time in my adult life, I was living according to my own priorities instead of constantly reacting to other people's crises. The family financial situation continued to deteriorate without my support, but it also forced everyone to make long overdue changes. Dad took on consulting work to supplement his retirement income. Tom finally had honest conversations with Sarah about their finances and started budgeting properly. Gary found a full-time job and moved into a smaller, more affordable apartment. Were they struggling? Yes. But they were also growing, learning to handle their own responsibilities instead of relying on me to solve their problems. The first family contact after Mom's letter came from an unexpected source. My niece Emma, now 9 years old. She called me on a Saturday afternoon, her young voice uncertain but determined. Aunt Linda, it's Emma. I'm calling because I miss you and I want to know if you're okay. The innocence of her concern nearly broke my heart. I'm doing very well, sweetheart. How are you? I'm good. Mom and Dad explained that Grandma said some mean things to you and that's why you don't come to family dinners anymore. I just wanted you to know that I love you. Children, I reflected, often understood what adults made complicated. I love you too, Emma, more than you know. Will you come to my birthday party next month? I promise Grandma will be nice. The invitation was touching, but I wasn't ready for family gatherings yet. I can't come to the party, but how about if you and I have our own celebration, just the two of us? Her excitement was infectious. Really? Can we go to that place with the big sundaes? Absolutely. That afternoon with Emma was a turning point. She chattered about school and friends and her latest art projects, treating me like the beloved aunt I'd always been. She didn't care about money or family dynamics or adult complications. She just loved me for who I was. Are you ever coming back to family dinners? She asked as I drove her home. Maybe someday, I said honestly, but some things need to change first. Like what? Like people need to learn how to treat each other with kindness, even when they're upset about other things. She nodded solemnly. That makes sense. Out of the mouths of babes. 1 year after Dad's birthday dinner, I received a call that I'd been both expecting and dreading. Dad's voice was strained, older than his 61 years. Linda, I need to tell you something. Your mother had a heart attack yesterday. She's in the hospital, and the doctors say she's going to be okay, but it was serious. My first instinct was to ask about insurance, about bills, about whether they needed financial help. But I caught myself. That wasn't my role anymore. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. How are you holding up? I'm scared, he admitted, and I keep thinking about how things have been between all of us this past year. Life's too short for this kind of separation. I drove to the hospital that evening, my first time seeing my parents in 12 months. Dad looked exhausted. Worry lines etched deeper into his face, but he lit up when he saw me, pulling me into a fierce hug. Thank you for coming, he whispered. Mom was awake when I entered her room, and the year apart had changed her as much as it had changed me. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, but also calmer. Linda, she said softly, I wasn't sure you'd come. You're my mother, I replied simply. Of course I came. We talked for an hour, carefully avoiding the topics that had driven us apart. She asked about my work, my life, my happiness. I asked about her recovery, her plans, her needs. It wasn't the reunion either of us might have imagined, but it was a beginning. As I prepared to leave, Mom caught my hand. I've been thinking about what I said that night at dinner, she said. About you not being part of the family. It was the cruelest thing I've ever said, and the most untrue. You're not just part of this family, Linda. You're the heart of it. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition, of finally being seen for who I really was. I know, I said. And I did know. I'd always been the heart of the family. The question was whether they deserved that heart. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, Mom continued. The way they were wasn't fair to you. But I hope we can find a new way forward. Over the following months, we did exactly that. Family dinners resumed, but with new rules and dynamics. Everyone contributed what they could, whether financially or through time and effort. I helped when I chose to, not because I was expected to solve every problem. Mom and I attended therapy sessions together, working through decades of complicated family dynamics. It was difficult work, but it was also healing. Tom and Gary both made efforts to rebuild their relationships with me, acknowledging the ways they'd taken my support for granted. Their apologies came with behavioral changes, with genuine effort to be better brothers and more responsible adults. 6 months after Mom's heart attack, we celebrated Dad's 61st birthday at the same restaurant where everything had fallen apart the year before. But this time, everyone contributed to the bill. This time, I was there as a beloved daughter, not a financial resource. As we raised our glasses in a toast to Dad, I caught Mom's eye across the table. She smiled at me, a smile full of love and respect and genuine appreciation for the woman I'd become. To family, Dad said, his voice strong and happy. To family, we all echoed. But this time, when I said those words, I knew I truly belonged to the family I was toasting. Not because of what I could provide, but because of who I was. The heart attack had been a wake-up call for all of us, but especially for Mom. She'd realized that pushing away the people who loved her most wasn't protecting her pride. It was destroying her family. My relationship with David continued to flourish. He'd been incredibly supportive during the family crisis, understanding that sometimes loving someone means giving them space to heal their other relationships. You're different than when we first met, he observed one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. Different how? More at peace with yourself, more confident in your worth. He was right. The year of separation from my family had taught me that my value wasn't contingent on what I could do for other people. I was worthy of love simply for being myself. Work continued to go well. I'd been promoted again and was now managing a team of analysts. The leadership skills I'd developed through years of managing family crises translated well to professional management, but without the emotional manipulation and guilt. I'd also started a financial literacy program for young women, teaching them the skills I'd learned the hard way about budgeting, investing, and maintaining financial boundaries with family. It was deeply rewarding work that felt like turning my painful experiences into something positive for others. The most important thing to remember, I told the women in my workshops, is that financial support should never come at the cost of your emotional well-being. Generosity is beautiful, but not when it's being exploited. Many of the women shared stories similar to mine, and I was amazed by how common these family financial dynamics were. It seemed I wasn't the only daughter who'd been expected to sacrifice her own financial security for family stability. As the second anniversary of that birthday dinner approached, I found myself reflecting on how completely my life had changed. I was in a healthy relationship, thriving professionally, financially stable, and most importantly, at peace with my family relationships. The woman who had walked out of that restaurant 2 years earlier had been broken and desperate for validation. The woman I'd become was strong, confident, and clear about her own worth. That growth hadn't come without cost. There had been lonely nights, difficult conversations, and moments of doubt about whether I was doing the right thing. But every challenge had led led to greater strength, greater clarity, and ultimately greater peace. The final piece of healing came when Mom asked if she could attend one of my financial literacy workshops. "I want to understand what you do," she said. "And I want to learn how to manage money better so I never have to put that kind of burden on you again." Watching my mother take notes as I explained budgeting strategies and investment principles was surreal, but it was also deeply moving. She was making a genuine effort to understand my world and to take responsibility for her own financial future. After the workshop, she lingered as other participants filed out. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Not just for what you've accomplished professionally, but for the way you stood up for yourself. You taught our whole family how to love better." Those words meant more to me than any amount of money ever could have. Now, when people ask me about family relationships and financial boundaries, I tell them about that birthday dinner. I tell them about walking away from a family that took my love for granted and about the long, difficult process of rebuilding those relationships on healthier terms. Sometimes, I say, the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable dysfunction, even when that dysfunction has become comfortable for everyone involved. The woman who raised her glass that night and said, "Perfect. Then don't ask me for any more money," wasn't being cruel or vindictive. She was finally, after 28 years, standing up for herself. And in doing so, she saved not just herself, but her entire family. Because real love isn't about what you can provide for someone else. Real love is about seeing each other clearly, accepting each other fully, and choosing each other freely. That's the kind of family I have now. And it's worth more than all the money in the world. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you find the courage to prioritize your own well-being? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family, relationships, and finding your own strength. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't measured by what they can do for others. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is love yourself enough to demand better treatment. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.